my show. I don't know how he does it with his busy schedule.
Yeah.
It's so good to be here again, Sean. You know that you get the greatest rating.
He made millions laugh without ever moving his lips. But behind that still smile was a man who nearly lost everything. On a day meant for candy hearts and classroom valentines, a 5th grade Terry Fator wandered into his school library, not in search of love, but a book for a class assignment, and what he found instead would change his life. Nestled on the shelf was a curious title, Ventriloquism for Fun and Profit by Paul Winchell. That single moment, an unexpected twist of fate, sparked a lifelong passion that would ultimately make Terry one of the most successful entertainers in Las Vegas history. Most kids forget school assignments the moment the bell rings, but not Terry. He devoured the book and began practicing with a mirror, transforming his curiosity into a disciplined craft. Weeks later, armed with a $25 ventriloquist dummy from Sears, named Willie Talk, he stepped in front of a church picnic audience and delivered his very first performance. He didn't just win the crowd, he won the $25 prize. From there, he was hooked. At just 10 years old, Terry spent countless hours entertaining his family, mimicking voices, and pushing the boundaries of his young imagination. He was never the loudest in the room, but he had a gift for bringing voices to life through puppets, and a mother who believed in him so much. She saved for 3 years to buy him his first professional puppet when he turned 18. That kind of support lit a fire in Terry that no rejection could put out. He wasn't just mimicking voices for fun, he was shaping a skill set that would one day help him impersonate stars like Garth Brooks and Etta James, even while keeping his lips perfectly still. In his own words, he explained how practicing in the car, without moving his mouth, wasn't just a quirky habit, it was a way of making an art form his own. Other people looked goofy singing in the car, he said, so I just learned to do it without moving my lips. The lesson? Passion finds you when you're not looking, but it's commitment that turns it into destiny. Always listen to what excites your inner child. There's often genius buried in the playful beginnings. Imagine getting your big break with a touring band, only to lose it all because your gift was too different to be understood. That's exactly what happened to Terry Fator in the late 1980s, when he became the lead singer for Texas the Band. At first, it felt like a dream come true. He had already proven his vocal skills while touring with Freedom Jam, performing at more than 200 schools across North America. But now, with a band behind him, he was sure this would be his launchpad into stardom. There was only one problem: Terry didn't sing like Terry. He impersonated legendary vocalists like James Taylor and Dean Martin, using his uncanny mimicry to wow the crowd. But one day, a representative from the band's label pulled him aside and asked him to sing using his real voice. It was a moment that caught Terry completely off guard, because the truth was, he didn't know what that voice sounded like. His entire career had been built on imitating others with such precision that he'd never developed a signature sound of his own. That revelation not only rattled him, it tanked the band's prospects. Plans to sign a major label deal were dropped. Terry left the group, disillusioned and unsure if he had any future in music or comedy. Alone again, he returned to performing solo acts, combining ventriloquism and humor, but the results were grim. At outdoor fairs, he performed in blistering heat, often suffering heat strokes. One humiliating day, he rented a 1,000-seat theater and performed for exactly one person. That moment nearly broke him. Every artist hits walls, but Terry's walls came with heat exhaustion, financial debt, and emotional isolation. He was so close to walking away, ready to leave it all behind for a more stable life. But the voice of his mother, the echo of his own childhood joy, and the encouragement of his inner circle pulled him back. If you've ever felt like giving up after one too many failures, remember Terry's lowest point wasn't the end. It was the setup for an extraordinary comeback. Sometimes it takes breaking to discover what you're truly made of. How do you keep performing when it feels like the world has already moved on? For Terry Fator, the years following his band fallout were marked by rejection, self-doubt, and an aching sense that maybe he'd wasted his youth chasing a dream that would never catch fire. He found himself stuck in a circuit of uninspiring gigs, county fairs, small-town festivals, and underwhelming crowds. Most performers use applause as fuel, but Terry often got silence or sweat, especially during those brutal outdoor summer shows, where the heat nearly knocked him out cold. Each time he stepped on stage, he hoped it would be the moment that changed everything, and each time he walked off feeling further from that goal. As he entered his late 30s, the fantasy of fame had become a weight, not a motivator. He once confessed that by that point, I wasn't sure it was ever going to happen. But even in that emotional darkness, Terry kept tinkering with his act, adding bits of comedy, sharpening his impersonations, refining the timing of his puppet interactions. He knew the problem wasn't his talent, it was the packaging. The real breakthrough came in 2005, when he started experimenting with singing impressions during a performance of Friends in Low Places. The audience erupted in applause. Something clicked: the comedic timing, the voice switching, the ventriloquism. It all fused into a performance that people couldn't ignore. That one crowd reaction acted like a defibrillator to his career. For the first time in years, Terry felt a pulse of possibility. He went back to his notebook, reworked his routines, and infused each performance with a mix of vocal mastery, humor, and puppet-driven personality. That rebirth wasn't overnight, but it was real. Audiences began responding, gigs grew in size, and Terry finally began to believe that maybe, just maybe, the door wasn't shut for good. His story proves that reinvention isn't just about changing what you do, it's about rediscovering what you've always had, and learning to present it in a way that the world finally sees. When failure whispers that you're finished, sometimes the right answer is to whisper back louder, and in Terry's case, that whisper came with a puppet on his hand, and 1,000 voices ready to roar. You know a moment is life-changing when it begins with zero expectations and ends with global stardom. That's exactly how Terry Fator approached his audition for America's Got Talent in 2007. He didn't go in expecting to win. In fact, he didn't even think he'd make it past the first few rounds. His real goal? Just get seen by David Letterman, like the ventriloquist from season 1. But what started as a long shot turned into a cultural earthquake. When Terry stepped on that stage, Judge David Hasselhoff muttered skeptically, "Oh no, a ventriloquist." And in that instant, Terry assumed he was doomed. Even he gave himself 0% chance of winning. But then something magical happened. He performed, and the room changed. Judges Piers Morgan and Sharon Osbourne lit up. The audience rose to their feet. His voice impressions of iconic singers stunned everyone. The cherry on top, Simon Cowell himself, known for dismantling dreams with a single sentence, looked Terry in the eye and told him he was one of the top 2 entertainers on the planet. That kind of praise doesn't come lightly. Terry didn't just win AGT. He redefined what was possible for a ventriloquist. The ripple effect was immediate. Offers poured in, stages opened up, and he suddenly found himself juggling national appearances. Ironically, he turned down Letterman, not once, but 14 times, because his schedule was too packed. While some critics whispered that he'd grown arrogant, Terry clarified the truth. "It broke my heart every time I had to turn him down." That moment shut down the rumors and highlighted the new reality. Terry wasn't chasing opportunities anymore. They were chasing him. His AGT win was more than a trophy. It was vindication for decades of hard work and a signal to every overlooked artist that sometimes just one platform is all it takes to flip the script. Never underestimate the power of an underdog, especially one with 100 voices behind him and a story no one saw coming. What happens when your dream finally comes true, but it's so big it overwhelms everything you ever imagined? After winning America's Got Talent, Terry Fator didn't just get applause. He got catapulted into the most elite ranks of Las Vegas entertainers, faster than anyone anticipated. At first, the post-show prize included a slot at the Jubilee Theater in Bally's, Las Vegas. But that offer came with a catch. It was only a 15-minute spot. Terry, now aware of his skyrocketing potential, declined it. It wasn't ego, it was strategy. Instead, he and his management focused on building something bigger, something worthy of the voice-filled universe he had crafted over decades. And it worked. By December 2007, he was selling out the Las Vegas Hilton, earning not just cheers but demand. In early 2008, he inked a deal with the Hilton for 3 shows, a $1.5 million contract that set the tone for his newfound dominance. But that was just the warm-up. After a show-stopping appearance on The Oprah Winfrey Show, where even Oprah couldn't stop laughing at his puppet Julius singing Marvin Gaye, the entertainment world stood at attention. 2 months later, Terry signed a historic 5-year $100 million contract with the Mirage. The deal was so massive, It led to the theater being renamed the Terry Fator Theater, cementing him as Las Vegas royalty. From struggling county fair performer to strip headliner with his name on the marquee, Terry's journey became one of the most meteoric rises in Vegas history. He went from one-man act to full residency, replacing the legendary Danny Gans. But fame didn't make him forget his roots. He brought the same puppets, the same voices, the same gratitude to every show. That leap proves one thing: when you finally get your shot, take it on your terms. Don't shrink your vision to fit into someone else's box. Terry didn't settle for 15 minutes. He built a theater that runs on standing ovations and stories no one else can tell. What if your greatest talent wasn't just for applause, but for healing? That's how Terry Fator approached fame, not as a platform to elevate himself, but as a tool to uplift others. While the world watched him bring laughter to sold-out Vegas audiences, behind the scenes he was quietly funneling his success into something far more powerful: philanthropy. In July 2007, just as his career began to shift, Terry returned to Montana to raise money for the Kidsport Sports Complex in Kalispell. He didn't just perform. He donated all the proceeds and promised to return, despite a schedule that would soon become one of the busiest in entertainment. When locals doubted he'd follow through, he shocked them by coming back the next year without hesitation. That act of follow-through spoke volumes. Terry valued the cause more than the spotlight. Later that year, he performed to benefit the families of miners in Huntington, Utah, and continued this trend across the country. At the Palace Theater in Corsicana, Texas, his hometown, he donated every dollar to the Navarro Council of the Arts and the Mildred Drama Club. To him, the stage was sacred, but its power was meant to serve more than laughter. That philosophy led to the founding of the Terry Fator Foundation, a non-profit devoted to honoring America's veterans and active duty heroes. The foundation's mission was clear: support the brave, care for their families, and align with top non-profits to ensure real impact. He even dedicated the profits from his original song Horses in Heaven to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, knowing music could fund miracles. Whether he was auctioning celebrity doodles for NF awareness, or sending his puppets to brighten a child's day, Terry turned ventriloquism into a force of compassion. The real performance wasn't on stage, it was in every unseen gesture of kindness. Fame gives you a microphone, but character decides what message you send through it. Behind every joke, every puppet, and every standing ovation was a haunted boy still aching for approval. Terry Fator's greatest tragedy didn't unfold under the bright lights of Vegas. It began in the shadowed corners of his own childhood home. His father, Jeff Fator, wasn't just strict. He was a force of emotional and psychological chaos. Terry has openly described his upbringing as cult-like, a home governed by extreme religious control, where fear ruled and love was conditional. In deeply personal interviews, Terry revealed that his father developed a terrifying messianic complex, believing he was Christ on earth and demanding total obedience. The trauma climaxed in one horrifying incident when Terry was a child. After discovering that his older brother had fallen in love while at college, Jeff allegedly grabbed a shotgun and threatened to kill his wife and children. That moment scarred Terry permanently. He recalls breaking down while watching Bambi at age 15, not because of the movie's sadness, but because Bambi's love made him feel his own life would never include anything like that. The idea of being loved felt foreign, unreachable. At 26, under his father's pressure, Terry even entered a marriage he didn't want, terrified of the consequences if he defied him. That marriage ended in 2010, long after it had become a cage. For 15 years, Terry and his father had no contact, an emotional silence that finally offered him room to breathe. But the damage lingered. Even at the height of his fame, he carried the weight of never hearing "I'm proud of you" from the one man who should have said it first. This isn't just the story of a celebrity's difficult upbringing. It's a reminder that not all battles are visible, and not all heroes wear smiles. Terry built a career out of making others laugh, but inside he was still healing from a war most never knew he fought. If success is climbing the mountain, emotional survival is carrying the rocks you never asked to bear. Winning America's Got Talent should have been the open door to everything. For Terry Fator, it was, but only partially. The truth was that even after being crowned AGT champion in 2007 and landing a record-breaking Vegas deal, parts of Hollywood still turned a cold shoulder. Why? Because in an industry obsessed with image and trends, a ventriloquist, even a wildly talented one, was seen as niche, gimmicky, maybe even outdated. Terry's craft, honed over decades, didn't fit neatly into the box that agents, producers, and late-night hosts were used to booking. And while he gained millions of fans and global recognition, the higher echelons of celebrity culture didn't quite roll out the red carpet. Some insiders speculated that Terry was simply too Vegas, pigeonholed as a strip act rather than a national comedy figure like Jeff Dunham or Kevin Hart. Even his voice impressions, though praised for accuracy, were occasionally dismissed as novelty. It stung, especially after putting in the work most comedians never survive long enough to attempt. But Terry refused to let the snubs define him. He leaned into his Vegas empire, crafting full-scale shows that combined humor, music, and masterful puppetry with the precision of a Broadway production. Instead of chasing validation from Hollywood, he built something bigger, an unshakable base of loyal fans, sold-out residencies, and critical acclaim where it mattered most. Still, that undercurrent of exclusion echoed quietly in interviews and industry whispers. He had won over America, but not all of the power players behind the curtain. And yet that's the quiet victory Terry never needed to say out loud. He didn't fit the mold because he was never meant to. In a world that wants entertainers to walk a straight line, Terry Fator built his own stage, filled it with 1,000 voices, and proved that you don't need Hollywood when you've got an empire built from authenticity. Don't wait for doors to open. Sometimes, you build your own theater instead. If you've made it this far, you already know Terry Fator's story isn't just about puppets. It's about persistence through pain, brilliance, born from rejection, and a childhood that would break most people. But what if we told you the real storm hadn't even hit yet? Coming up, we're diving into the shocking fallout from Terry's $100 million Mirage deal, a betrayal that drained millions from his fortune, and the embezzlement scandal that almost destroyed everything he built. So if you thought his battles were behind him, think again. Don't forget to hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe, because what happens next will leave you absolutely stunned. For over a decade, the Mirage wasn't just Terry Fator's stage, it was his kingdom. He wasn't just another Vegas headliner, he was the face on the billboard, the name etched on the theater walls. After his 2008 signing, his residency at the Mirage defined a new era of strip entertainment, smart, family-friendly, musically dynamic, and emotionally resonant. But in 2021, without warning, that seemingly unbreakable partnership ended. No press conference, no joint statement, just silence. For fans and industry insiders alike, it was like watching a magic trick in reverse. Suddenly the stage was empty, and no one could explain why. Speculation flew. Was it contract disputes, creative differences, financial tension? Neither Terry nor Mirage publicly addressed the split, and that silence only deepened the mystery. What came next was even more puzzling. Terry, the man whose name once lit up the Strip, began performing at the New York Hotel's Liberty Loft. The venue was smaller, the buzz quieter, the energy different. Reviews were still positive. Terry's talent didn't vanish, but something about the fit wasn't right. Fans sensed it, and attendance reflected it. By February 2024, the Las Vegas Review-Journal confirmed Terry's stint at Liberty Loft was ending. For the first time in over 15 years, Terry Fator, the undisputed puppet king of Vegas, had no stage. It was a shocking reality for someone who once signed one of the biggest entertainment deals in Vegas history. But if there's one thing Terry has shown the world, it's resilience. In May 2024, he revealed his next act, a new residency at the STRAT, titled Terry Fator, 1 Man, 100 Voices, 1,000 Laughs. It was a fresh start, with a new co-producer and revamped energy. The sky's the limit, he said. But make no mistake, this wasn't just a venue change. It was a comeback wrapped in dignity, silence, and strategic reinvention. When your crown slips, don't panic, adjust it, and build a bigger throne. You trust someone for years, let them handle your fortune, sign off on every paycheck they write, and then one day you realize they've been bleeding you dry from inside. That's exactly what happened to Terry Fator when he uncovered a jaw-dropping embezzlement scandal that threatened his $160 million empire. In October 2021, Terry's team began noticing unusual transactions and inconsistencies in his financial records. They brought it to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police, but were initially brushed off, so they escalated the matter to the FBI. The culprit? Vincent Sua, a longtime employee Terry had trusted deeply. According to a 2023 report from CBS affiliate 8 News Now, Vincent, alongside an unnamed payroll supervisor, had been secretly inflating salaries, misusing company credit cards, and funneling money into personal luxuries. Over the course of 2 years, Vincent's salary ballooned from $150,000 to $200,000 without authorization. The payroll supervisor's pay more than doubled, from $65,000 to $140,000. And it didn't stop there. They used company cards to finance luxury vacations to Hawaii, Disneyland, and Europe. They bought high-end cars. Vincent even placed a down payment on a Tesla using company funds. Tens of thousands were spent on sports tickets, home renovations, and security deposits for personal residences. One of the most brazen moves? Using Terry's business account to bankroll a separate hula show company that Vincent owned privately. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal. These weren't strangers. These were people Terry had worked with, laughed with, trusted with every dollar he earned through blood, sweat, and puppet strings. Vincent was eventually charged with 4 counts of theft over $3,500. His attorney claimed innocence, reminding the court that all clients deserve a fair trial regardless of the celebrity involved. But the damage was done. This wasn't just about dollars, it was about a man who gave everything, only to be robbed from within. It's a brutal reminder, no matter how big your dream, it can unravel fast when the wrong people are holding the purse strings. When betrayal becomes a pattern, even your closest allies start to look suspicious. And for Terry Fator, the embezzlement case against Vincent Sua wasn't the first time someone inside his circle turned against him. Back in July 2014, a lawsuit emerged that stunned both fans and colleagues. His former manager, John McEntee, claimed that Terry still owed him money, despite a previous settlement from 2010. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. John was alleging that he deserved a larger share of Terry's growing fortune, asserting that the initial arrangement hadn't accounted for the long-term success that followed Terry's breakout moment on America's Got Talent. But Terry wasn't about to fold. He fired back, asserting publicly that McEntee had already received well over $10 million during their business relationship, and that any further claims were baseless. Still, the lawsuit dragged out, staining Terry's public image and weighing heavily on his private life. The back-to-back betrayals from trusted insiders forced him to reevaluate who he let into his financial and emotional world. It wasn't just about legal paperwork, it was about the slow erosion of trust. Every entertainer dreams of having a loyal team, people who will protect their interests while they focus on the art. But for Terry, the very people tasked with guarding his legacy were instead feeding off it. By the time the financial scandals surfaced years later, fans began to wonder if Terry had a blind spot for loyalty. Was he too trusting, too forgiving, or just too focused on performance to see the cracks forming around him? Either way, the damage was undeniable. His once stable empire was now entangled in legal filings, accounting audits, and public drama. The lesson? Fame amplifies everything, especially betrayal. And when you build your success on trust, the collapse can feel twice as personal. For Terry, each lawsuit wasn't just a legal fight, it was another emotional scar, each cut made worse by the realization that sometimes the hardest battles aren't with competitors, but with people you once considered family. While Terry's professional life was riddled with victories and betrayals, his personal life mirrored the same dramatic swings, none more powerful than the story of his marriages. His first marriage to Melinda, beginning in 1991, wasn't a fairy tale, it was a commitment forged under spiritual pressure and parental control. At just 26, Terry's fear of defying his religious upbringing and his domineering father led him to marry someone he never felt deeply connected to. He would later describe the marriage as one of the worst decisions of his life, not because Melinda was cruel, but because the foundation was built on fear rather than love. Still, he stayed faithful, loyal, and silent for nearly 2 decades. It wasn't until 2009 that Melinda filed for divorce, and Terry publicly acknowledged the separation months later. Their split wasn't vindictive, it was bittersweet. It wasn't the pressures of a career, he said. It was more personal matters, just some things we were unable to see eye to eye on. They parted as friends, refusing to descend into hatred. Then came Taylor Makakawa, a former assistant turned romantic partner, and later, Terry's second wife. Their relationship, though passionate, burned out quickly. By 2015, another divorce loomed. Critics whispered about Terry's impulsive decisions, and some speculated whether the quick rebound was a sign of deeper emotional searching. But then, something shifted. In the aftermath of heartbreak and career chaos, Terry met Angie Fiar. With her, he found not just love, but safety, grounding, and mutual respect. He's since described marrying Angie as one of the best choices of his life, finally allowing him to share success with someone who loved about the man, not just the performer. After decades of searching, Terry Fator, once a boy weeping in a theater, convinced he'd never be loved, found a partner who saw him for more than his puppets, his paycheck, or his fame. Love, like success, isn't always perfect the first time. But when you've lived through manipulation, silence, and loss, genuine connection hits different, and for Terry, it became the one thing no lawsuit, betrayal, or scandal could take away. In a world where puppets made people laugh, the man pulling the strings was quietly surviving a life that would break most. Terry Fator's story isn't just one of talent, it's one of grit, emotional endurance, and the scars that don't always show beneath a stage spotlight. From a troubled childhood, marked by religious extremism and psychological trauma, to a series of betrayals that drained his bank account and tested his trust, Terry's journey proves that fame is never a guarantee of peace. He made history in Vegas, won over America with voices that weren't his own, and built an empire with his bare hands, only to have pieces of it stolen by the very people he relied on. And yet, through every lawsuit, every heartbreak, and every empty theater, he never quit. He rebuilt, reinvented, and found his way back to the stage not once, but multiple times. Now headlining at the STRAT with one man, 100 voices, 1,000 laughs, he's reclaimed his narrative, and this time, it's on his terms. So the next time you hear Winston the Turtle, Julius, or Walter T. Airedale cracking jokes, remember this: behind every line is a man who spent decades turning pain into laughter, betrayal into motivation, and loneliness into legacy. If this story moved you, there's more where that came from. Stick around for the next deep dive into the lives of the icons you thought you knew. Sometimes the smile on stage hides a story far deeper than the punchline. This content is for entertainment purposes only, and does not constitute professional advice. Viewers are encouraged to consult with qualified experts for legal, financial, or psychological matters as needed.